the question is, if I really want to improve my English, I know that I need to practice speaking a lot, but I don't always have time to find a speaking partner. I don't always have the opportunity to have conversations with, for example, native English speakers. So I like to get that practice by myself, but it does feel a bit awkward to just talk to myself in my own head or to speak to the wall or a stuffed animal or my sofa or my cat or whatever. You can do that. It's great. Why not? What I want to do is give you a method which is quite powerful, which can help you improve your spoken English, which you can do by yourself. And most importantly, I'm going to actually give you the first thing that you can practice. I'm not going to just tell you the method and then leave you alone. I'm going to tell you the method and I'm going to give you a way to really start. So right after you watch this, you can begin. Okay? Now, the method itself is pretty simple. I recommend you do recording. You may have heard me say this before. But you give yourself something to talk about. Then you speak about that thing that you're going to talk about. But you do it in a way that's recorded, ideally. Now, I suggest doing a video recording. If you can record yourself, great. And if you really, really can't stand hearing yourself, then maybe try something like Otter. Otter transcribes your voice into text. Now, the reason I say that you should record in some way is that it brings the thing that's inside of you, that you've said, and makes it something that's outside of you. It makes it more objective. And if you're looking at something that's outside of you, you're able to be more aware of any of the issues that you might notice. I use this word too much. I'm making mistakes with the forms of the words. They don't agree. The verbs, for example, don't agree with the subjects. All of these things that you can probably point out, if it's someone else speaking, you might not be noticing in yourself. So the way to improve is to externalize where your English is, let's say it like that, at the level you are now, to put it outside of yourself so that you can study it, analyze it. So, simply, give yourself something to talk about and record it, listen back to it, give yourself feedback. All right, so that's what you do. But then, the real question is, yes, but how do I give myself something to talk about? What should I talk about? That's a big challenge in itself. I'm going to give you two things that you can talk about. Two kinds of speaking prompts. Let's call them speaking prompts. And these are somewhat challenging, not very easy, right? If you do them correctly. And the two types that we're going to talk about are open questions and explaining things. Open questions and explaining things. Now, what is an open question? An open question is a question that requires a longer answer. Right? If someone says, "How old are you?" 53. That's not an open question, really, because it's a short answer. So yes/no questions, often not the best type, unless it's followed by why, to explain the yes or the no. That's okay. Yes or no? Do you think this? Do you? Whatever. Yes. Why? Okay, then you give the explanation. That's fine. Generally, open questions should be subjective. If it's something like, tell me about some past historical event, then you are explaining and that's okay. But if it's based on your opinion, if it's subjective, then you have to think about what you really think, about what your view is, what your opinion is. Those are better because you don't have to look up some answer, you don't have to look up dates. You just say what you believe, say your opinion about something. So let's look at a couple of simple examples of these types of open questions, okay? What do you think about is an obvious one. But you have to be careful with this because sometimes you won't know how to actually begin. What do you think, for example, if someone says, what do you think about Nike? That's a company, right? Well, that's a really tough one. I couldn't answer that very easily because I don't know where to begin. So if you just say, what do you think about Nike? What do you think about dieting? What do you think about exercise? These very, very broad things, that might be too open. If it's too open, you won't know how to start. Now, you could choose something slightly more specific. If you're talking about exercise, maybe talking about a specific type of exercise. Maybe a certain type of exercise routine. What's that one? HIIT, H-I-I-T. This is a specific exercise style. There are a bunch of those. What do you think about CrossFit? Okay, that's more specific. Fine. But even better with what do you think about questions would be to say something that's happening or something that happens. For example, what do you think about, and then we're going to talk about a thing that happens, companies that offer both budget and premium products. So the first thing that comes to my mind there is a golf club company called Callaway. And they make one kind of golf clubs that are quite cheap, inexpensive, but then they make really, really expensive ones too. And I have a lot to talk about. That's something that I'm interested in. So it should be something that you know about, that you have an opinion about, but it's not just a right or wrong answer. What do you think about that, right? And that's a little bit more interesting and probably easier to talk about than just saying, what do you think about golf? So be a little more specific with that one, I think. How about this one? Why do people tend to? This is something that you can really talk about because you're focusing on behavior, right? Why do people tend to do things that they know other people are counting on them to do, but then they don't do things that they promise themselves that they will do? In other words, you have a gym buddy, you're going to go to the gym because they're waiting for you. But if it's you alone, you're not going to go often. Why? All right, so you can talk about that. What's the best way to? This is a great one for advice. And again, it should be focused on something that you know something about. And it could be anything. What's the best way to prepare for an interview? What's the best way to, maybe if you're in marketing, what's the best way to market an online education product? Whatever it is that you know something about. And that should be pretty interesting for you to talk about because it's something you know something about. The last one that I think is quite interesting is if you were, what would? This is a hypothetical one, and it allows you to use your imagination. That's what makes it, I think, more interesting. So you can use your imagination to ask ridiculous questions like, if you were the king or queen of your country, and what would you do about healthcare? I don't know if that even makes sense. But it could be crazy questions. It could be more interesting, nuanced questions about things you know about. Whatever. Use your creativity to come up with really interesting questions that you are interested to talk about. And then, when you answer, you can speak for 2 or 3 or 4 minutes. You have a lot to say. And that feels a little bit more like a conversation. There, you're not just talking to your sofa. You are answering a question that you can then listen to later. So that's great. Now, the other type is quite interesting, I think, prompts. And I think this one might be even better, but perhaps a little bit more challenging. And this one is probably easier to come up with. It's sometimes difficult to come up with a really good question, but having a topic to talk about, something to explain, it's pretty easy. Choose anything. And all you have to do is talk about what that thing is. Now, some things are harder than others. You're really explaining the concept of that thing, the idea of that thing. For example, what is a hospital? Now, that sounds like a very silly question. What is a hospital? But if you actually try to answer that question thoroughly, it's going to be pretty challenging, actually. What is culture? What is money? If you really try to answer that, you'll find it's a lot more difficult and challenging. It's not a one-sentence answer. It requires an explanation. What is culture? Okay. Well, culture is something that is shared by a group of people, often a group of people living in a particular place, but especially in the modern day, culture could be something that just exists among a group of people and doesn't have to be in a specific place. For example, internet culture, right? YouTube culture. The kind of things shared among those people may include beliefs, styles of cooking, language, ways to use language, for example, idioms and expressions, rituals, practices, norms, faux pas, all of the things that these people, the people who are in this group, this culture, share, which are unique to this group, which are not the same for other people in different cultures. And those things are what we use to compare the cultures. Oh, in this culture, people do this when they celebrate, for example, Christmas, but in another place, they celebrate it differently. Oh, great. Okay. Or the main family holiday is Chinese New Year, and it's celebrated in this way, and on the first night they do this, and the second night they do this. Or food, dance, music, all of that stuff. Okay, so that's my simple attempt at explaining what culture is, and I could go on and on. And really, I'm just exploring this thing as an idea out loud. I'm having thoughts out loud. Don't plan it. Don't write it down. Just have thoughts out loud, and you're forcing yourself to put language together in a way that might make sense to other people. You are practicing the skills that you need to have really good conversations. And then when you go back and you listen to what you recorded, it's outside of you so you can notice things, but then once you notice those things, remember them for next time. What did I say that wasn't quite as clear as it could have been? What could I improve upon? And this is a really great way to practice, whether you're asking open questions or you're giving yourself simple things to talk about. It could be an idea or a concept. It could be an object, if you like. Whatever it is, both of those, do both. Practice. And if you do it regularly every day, you will absolutely improve and you will start to feel more comfortable with the idea of having conversations and expressing yourself in English. Let me know how it goes in the comments. If you have questions, let me know in the comments. If you haven't already, don't forget to subscribe and follow. Also, hit the like button. That really helps the channel. And don't forget to check out my full courses in the links in the description.